Hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of horror stories that you can listen to while you fall asleep. Before the video begins, let us know what time is it and where you are listening from. Also, if you have suggestion for next horror story settings, let us know in the comments. Now let's begin. I have to write this down. The words feel like a desperate, final attempt to leave a record, to leave a mark, to prove that I was once a person. The memory is a living thing, and it's feeding on my sanity. They say the most terrifying things are the ones that could actually happen, and I'm here to tell you they're right. It started with a simple job. I'm an urban historian, a guy who spends his days in dusty archives, unearthing forgotten stories and mapping out the city's past. It's a quiet, solitary life, and I like it that way. This particular job was a massive one, a six-figure contract to be a live-in archivist for a reclusive, elderly professor of linguistics. The man, a Dr. Thorne, was a legend in his field, a man who had dedicated his life to the study of dead languages and forgotten dialects. He had a vast, sprawling collection of old journals, books, and research papers, and he needed someone to organize them. It felt like a gift from a desperate and bored god. The university annex was not what I expected. It was a sprawling, dilapidated building, a testament to a forgotten era. The air was thick with the smell of old paper, dust, and decay, a heavy, suffocating scent that clung to your clothes and your hair. The building had an unnerving quiet to it. It was a silence that wasn't empty, but full of the ghosts of forgotten things, a profound, heavy weight that sat on your chest. Dr. Thorne was a wisp of a man, thin and frail, with eyes that held the tired, distant look of someone who had been alone for a very long time. He spoke in a low, unwavering voice. "They're not just words," he said on my first day, his gaze fixed on a collection of old journals. "They're memories. They're a record of the soul, and I have to keep them safe." He was obsessed with the concept of language as a living thing. He believed that certain dialects, particularly those that were long dead, had a kind of memory, a physical imprint on the world. For the first few days, the work was a fascinating puzzle. I spent my days in a dusty, dimly lit office, meticulously organizing the old journals. The journals were a chronological record of a life, of a family, of a history. But then, I began to notice something that was off. The journals weren't just a record of a family. They were a meticulous, chronological record of every single person who had ever lived in a remote, isolated community. And the language they were written in, it wasn't an English dialect. It was a strange, cryptic language, a series of symbols and sounds that seemed to have no meaning. Dr. Thorne told me it was a lost dialect, a language that had been spoken in that community for generations. My mind raced. Was this a family of scholars, a family of strange, obsessive collectors? I told myself it was just a strange quirk, a family tradition I didn't understand. But then I began to hear them. The sounds. A soft, rhythmic clicking, like a hammer striking a chisel, a low, guttural humming, a soft, rhythmic tapping. I dismissed it as the sounds of an old building. The building was a living, breathing thing, and it had its own language. I told myself it was nothing, but the tapping grew more distinct. It sounded like a desperate, frantic plea. The clicking grew louder, and I would swear I could hear a low, guttural moan, a sound of profound suffering, muffled by the thick, soundproofed walls. And then I found it, a hidden room, tucked away behind a stack of old books. It was a soundproof chamber, its walls lined with strange acoustic panels. I shone my flashlight inside. It was a series of old, reel-to-reel tapes. They were labeled the dialect. My paranoia peaked. I couldn't sleep. I decided to play the tapes. The tapes were not a language. They were a horrifying, meticulous record of human suffering. The sounds were not words. They were screams. A chilling, soul-crushing symphony of human suffering. A symphony of fear. A single, unified sound of human despair. I stumbled backward, a scream clawing its way up my throat. I found a small, leather-bound journal on a table next to the reel-to-reel machine. It was Dr. Thorne's. The handwriting was neat and meticulous, a terrifying record of his true obsession. He didn't just study dead languages. He created them. He wrote about his belief that the most pure language was a language of human suffering, a language that could only be understood by a person who had experienced profound terror. He had been kidnapping people and teaching them his new language. The lost dialect was a lie. It was a new language, a language of pain. My mind screamed. I ran from the soundproofed room, my legs weak with terror. I ran to the front door, but it was locked. I ran to the windows, but they were boarded up. I was trapped. I ran back to the soundproofed room, my mind a storm of panic and disgust. But as I ran, I saw it. The final, most horrifying entry in his journal. It was a chilling, meticulous account of his final project. He wrote about a new student, a young historian with a mind so sharp, so curious, that he would be the perfect canvas for his new language. The description was of me. He wrote about my unblemished skin, my perfect features, my calm, trusting eyes. My blood ran cold. The door to the soundproofed room clicked, and a lock turned. I looked at the dark, silent hallway, and a voice, a low, melodic purr, came from the shadows. "Don't worry," Dr. Thorne said, his voice as gentle as a parent. "You're a perfect student. You're a keeper." The last thing I heard was the sound of my own panic. The sound of a man who had come to archive a language and who was about to be forced to learn one. The sound of a life being turned into a living, breathing graveyard of other people's pain. The last thing I saw was his face, a mask of calm, a smile that was so profound, so terrifying, that it was almost beautiful. He wasn't a monster. He was a creator of a new, horrifying language, and I was about to become his first word. I was working security at the Riverside Medical Complex. You know, that old psychiatric facility they converted into office spaces downtown. It was supposed to be a simple gig. Walk the floors, check the doors, make sure nobody broke in. Easy money for a college student like me. The building still felt wrong, even after the renovation. Those long, sterile hallways that seemed to stretch forever under flickering fluorescent lights. The way sounds echoed differently on each floor. How some rooms stayed cold no matter how high they cranked the heat. But I needed the job. Minimum wage plus night differential, and I could study between rounds. What could go wrong? It started with the elevator. Every night around 2:17 a.m., and I mean exactly 2:17, the elevator would come to life. I'd hear that familiar ding, see the numbers light up as it moved between floors. Always the same pattern, ground floor to third floor, pause for exactly 30 seconds, then back down. I mentioned it to my supervisor, Rick. He just laughed it off. "Old building, old wiring," he said. "Probably just some electrical quirk. Don't worry about it." But I did worry, because elevators don't just decide to take joyrides by themselves. I started timing it. Every single night, 2:17 a.m., the elevator would start its journey, and I'd watch those numbers climb. 1, 2, 3, pause, 2, 1. Like clockwork. After 2 weeks, curiosity got the better of me. I decided to see what was on the third floor that was so interesting. The third floor had been administrative offices during the hospital days, Rick had told me. Now it was mostly storage and a few small businesses that couldn't afford better locations. Nothing special. At 2:15 a.m., I positioned myself by the elevator bank, heart hammering against my ribs. The building was dead quiet except for the hum of the HVAC system and my own breathing. 2:17 a.m. Ding. The elevator doors slid open, revealing an empty car bathed in that sickly yellow light. I stepped inside, my footsteps unnaturally loud on the metal floor. The doors closed with a pneumatic hiss, and up we went. The third floor was dark when the doors opened. I fumbled for my flashlight, the beam cutting through the blackness as I stepped into the hallway. The air felt heavier up here, thick with the smell of dust and something else, something medicinal and sour. That's when I heard it. Scratching. Soft at first, like fingernails on wood. Coming from the end of the hall, behind the door marked records storage. I should have left. Every instinct screamed at me to get back in that elevator and never come up here again. But something pulled me forward, my flashlight beam dancing across peeling paint and water-stained ceiling tiles. The scratching got louder as I approached the door. More frantic, and underneath it, I heard something that made my blood freeze, whimpering. Soft, desperate whimpering. My hand trembled as I reached for the doorknob. It was unlocked. Inside, boxes upon boxes of old medical records lined metal shelving units. But in the corner, illuminated by my flashlight beam, was something that shouldn't have been there. A sleeping bag, food wrappers, a camping lantern, and scratched into the wall above it, over and over again, the same phrase. They said I was cured. They said I could leave. They lied. The whimpering stopped. I spun around, but the doorway was empty. Just darkness and the sound of my own ragged breathing. But I could feel eyes on me, watching, waiting. I ran. I don't care how that sounds. I ran like my life depended on it. Down the hall, jabbing the elevator call button until my finger went numb. When those doors finally opened, I practically threw myself inside. As the elevator descended, I looked up at the floor indicator. The number 3 was still lit, even though we were moving down. And just before we reached the ground floor, I heard it again, that scratching coming from somewhere above the elevator car. I finished my shift in the lobby, radio clutched in my hand, jumping at every sound. When the morning security guard arrived, I told him everything. He looked at me like I was losing my mind. "Kid," he said, "that storage room's been sealed for months. Water damage from a burst pipe. Nobody's been up there." But I knew what I'd seen. I knew what I'd heard. I quit that night. Rick tried to convince me to stay, said it was just first job jitters, but I was done. Some money isn't worth it. 3 weeks later, I saw the news report. They'd found him during a routine maintenance check. A former patient named David Marsh, who'd been living in the building for over a year. He'd been hiding in the walls, in abandoned rooms, surviving on vending machine food and whatever he could steal. The reporter said he'd been released from the psychiatric ward 5 years ago, declared fully rehabilitated. But David never really left. He'd been there the whole time, watching the security guards, learning their routines. Waiting. They found journals, detailed notes about every person who worked in that building, including me, especially me. The police said he'd been planning something. They found lists, schedules, floor plans. My home address was circled in red marker. But here's the thing that keeps me awake at night, the thing that makes my hands shake when I tell this story. They never found David. When the maintenance crew opened that storage room, it was empty. Just those scratches on the wall, and the lingering smell of someone who'd been living like an animal for months. The official report says he must have heard them coming and escaped through the old utility tunnels that connect to the building's basement. They've been searching for 3 months. No sign of him. But every night at 2:17 a.m., my phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. Always the same message. "I know where you live now." And sometimes, when I'm lying in bed trying to sleep, I swear I can hear scratching sounds coming from inside my walls. I moved in next to Martha 3 years ago, and I thought I'd hit the jackpot. You know how it is. You hear all these horror stories about nightmare neighbors, but Martha seemed like a dream. Sweet old lady, always baking cookies, kept her garden pristine. She even brought me a casserole on my first day. "Welcome to the neighborhood, dear," she said with that warm smile. "I'm so glad to have someone nice move in next door." I should have paid more attention to what happened to the previous tenant. Martha was always there. Not in an intrusive way. She was subtle about it. She'd be watering her flowers when I left for work, hanging laundry when I came home. Always with a cheerful wave and a "How was your day, sweetie?" At first, it was comforting. After my divorce, having someone who seemed to care felt good. Martha would invite me over for dinner, listen to me vent about work, offer advice about dating again. She felt like the mother I'd lost when I was 12. She remembered everything, every detail I'd ever mentioned. My ex-husband's name, my sister's birthday, the fact that I was allergic to shellfish. I was touched by how much she cared. Then I started noticing the little things, like how she always seemed to know when I'd had a bad day before I even told her. How she'd show up with soup exactly when I was getting sick, before I'd even felt the first symptoms. How her random phone calls always came at the precise moment I needed someone to talk to. "It's like you're psychic," I joked one evening over tea. Her laugh was a little too sharp. "Oh, honey, you'd be surprised what you can learn just by paying attention." The paying attention comment stuck with me. That night, I really looked at Martha's house for the first time. Really looked. Her living room window faced mine perfectly. Her kitchen window had a direct view into my bedroom. The chair by her front window was positioned at just the right angle to see my driveway, my front door, and most of my backyard. I told myself I was being paranoid. Martha was just a caring neighbor, maybe a little lonely. But then I found the notebook. I was helping her bring in groceries when it fell out of her purse. A small, leather-bound notebook that landed open on her kitchen floor. I bent to pick it up and saw my own handwriting staring back at me. Not my actual handwriting, but a perfect imitation of it. Page after page of practice letters. My signature, over and over again. My address written in my own hand, dozens of times. And at the bottom of the page I could see: Sarah leaves for work 7:47 a.m. Returns 6:15 to 6:30 p.m. Grocery shopping Saturdays. Sleeps with bedroom window cracked. "Oh, that's nothing, dear," Martha said, snatching the notebook away before I could read more. "Just some silly exercises my doctor gave me. Arthritis, you know. supposed to help with hand coordination. But I'd seen enough. That wasn't arthritis exercises. That was someone learning to forge my handwriting. I started paying attention to Martha the way she'd been paying attention to me. She got mail for at least 6 different names. I watched her through my kitchen window as she sorted through it each morning, separating letters into neat piles. When I casually asked about it, she laughed it off. "Oh, you know how the post office is. Still delivering mail for previous tenants." But some of those names had been getting mail for 3 years, since before I'd moved in. I did some research. Quiet research, because by then I was genuinely scared. The county records showed that Martha's house had been sold 4 times in the past decade, each time to a different buyer. But Martha had been living there the whole time. The previous tenant of my house, the one who'd moved out right before I arrived, was named Jennifer Walsh. I found her obituary online. She'd died in a car accident 2 weeks after moving to Phoenix. The accident report mentioned she'd been driving erratically, as if she'd been confused or disoriented. Her signature on the death certificate looked exactly like mine. That's when I understood. Martha wasn't just watching me. She was studying me, learning me, becoming me. I started documenting everything, taking photos of the mail, recording our conversations when I could. I called the police, but what was I supposed to say? My neighbor is too helpful? She practices handwriting? They took a report, but made it clear they thought I was having some kind of breakdown. Has she threatened you? Officer Martinez asked. No, but. Stolen from you? Damaged your property? Not exactly, but. Ma'am, being a good neighbor isn't a crime. But I knew something was wrong. Deeply, horribly wrong. The truth came out 2 weeks ago, when I came home early from work with food poisoning. I saw Martha in my backyard, using a key to let herself into my house. My house. I sat in my car and called 911, watching through my living room window as Martha moved around inside. She wasn't stealing anything. She was practicing. Sitting in my chair, cooking in my kitchen, sleeping in my bed, getting comfortable with being Sarah. When the police arrived, they found copies of my driver's license, my social security card, my passport, all perfectly forged in Martha's neat handwriting. They found detailed files on 6 other women, including Jennifer Walsh. Birth certificates, medical records, work histories, entire lives, perfectly documented and ready to assume. Martha's real name was Helen Voss. She was wanted in connection with 4 missing persons cases across 3 states. The police think she's been doing this for years, finding lonely women, studying them, then taking over their lives completely. They arrested her that day, but she was released on bail within 48 hours. Flight risk assessment shows minimal danger, they said. She's been cooperative and has ties to the community. She came home that same night. I watched from my window as she unpacked groceries, watered her garden, waved at the neighbors. Like nothing had happened. But something had changed. She didn't pretend anymore. Yesterday, I found a new notebook by my front door. This one was filled with my daily routine, but with corrections in Martha's handwriting. Sarah leaves for work too early, it said. Sarah should sleep later. Sarah should call in sick more often. Sarah should stop going to her sister's house. And at the very end, in that perfect imitation of my own handwriting, Sarah should disappear. It would be better for everyone. I've been staying at my sister's house since then. I can't go back. But I got a call this morning from my credit card company asking about some unusual activity. Someone had been using my card to order things online. Clothes in my size. A new driver's license photo service. A passport renewal. The shipping address was Martha's house. I don't know what happens next. The police say they can't arrest her for using my credit card because the signature matches perfectly. It's indistinguishable from mine. My bank says there's no fraud because I authorized the transactions. But I know Martha is getting ready, practicing the final performance. Because here's what I never told the police, what I'm too scared to even say out loud. Martha has a key to my house. She's had it the whole time, and I never gave her one. I need to tell someone about the videos before I delete them. My lawyer says I should, but I can't bring myself to do it. Not yet. It started with insomnia. Nothing unusual. I've always been a light sleeper. But after my promotion to night shift supervisor at the warehouse, it got worse. I'd come home at 6 a.m., exhausted, but couldn't fall asleep until noon. Then I'd wake up at 4 p.m. feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My doctor prescribed sleeping pills. Strong ones. Take one, you'll sleep for 8 hours straight, he promised. He was wrong about the 8 hours part. I started setting up my phone to record myself sleeping. Stupid, maybe, but I wanted to see if I was tossing and turning, talking in my sleep, anything that might explain why I felt so terrible. The first video was normal. Me lying in bed, barely moving for 6 hours. But I'd slept for 12. 6 hours were missing. I thought it was a glitch. Checked the timestamp, 6:47 a.m. to 12:33 p.m. But my phone showed I'd been recording for 12 hours and 14 minutes. The file was corrupted, I figured. But it kept happening. Every day, same thing. I'd set the camera, take a pill, and wake up with 6 missing hours. The videos always showed me sleeping peacefully, then just ended. But the timestamp never lied. I started getting paranoid. Changed the locks, installed a security system, even put cameras in every room. If someone was breaking in and doing something to me while I was unconscious, I'd catch them. The footage made everything worse. External cameras showed no one entering or leaving. But the internal cameras, they kept malfunctioning during those missing hours. Static, then darkness, then normal recording resumed right when I woke up. All of them. Every single camera in my house would fail at the exact same time. I stopped taking the pills. Figured I'd rather be tired than unconscious and vulnerable. But the missing time continued. I'd lie down exhausted at 6 a.m. and wake up at 6 p.m. with no memory of anything in between. That's when I found the notes. Post-it notes stuck to my bathroom mirror, written in my handwriting. Check the basement. Look behind the water heater. Count the ceiling tiles. I don't remember writing them. I followed the first note down to my basement. Behind the water heater, I found a duffel bag I'd never seen before. Inside, clothes that weren't mine, a fake ID with my photo but a different name, and $50,000 in cash. The ceiling tiles note led me to discover a hidden camera in my bedroom, not one of mine. Someone had been watching me sleep, but the serial number traced back to a purchase I'd made 6 months ago. My credit card, my signature on the receipt. I was watching myself. The final note appeared last week. Check your car's GPS history. My hands shook as I scrolled through the data. During my missing hours, my car had been traveling. The same route over and over. 43 miles to an address in the industrial district, then back home. I'd made this trip 17 times in the past month. I drove there yesterday morning, following my own GPS breadcrumbs. The address was a storage unit facility. Unit 247 was rented under my name, paid in advance for 6 months. The key was in my jacket pocket, a jacket I don't remember buying. Inside the unit, dozens of manila folders, each labeled with a name and address. Photos, daily schedules, work information, family details. Complete profiles on strangers. And at the bottom of each file, in my handwriting, target acquired. Awaiting instructions. I found my own file in the stack. Photos of me leaving work, entering my house, sleeping in my bed. Notes about my routine, my vulnerabilities, my fears. And at the bottom, in handwriting that wasn't mine, asset ready for activation. That's when I understood. The sleeping pills weren't making me unconscious. They were making me compliant. Someone has been using me during those missing hours, turning me into something I don't want to think about. The phone call started this morning. Unknown numbers, voices I don't recognize giving me addresses, instructions, details about people I've never met. When I hang up, I find myself writing down everything they said. I can't stop my hand from moving. Tonight's instruction is simple. Sarah Mitchell, 1247 Oak Street. Leaves for work at 7:30 a.m. Lives alone. Spare key under the flower pot. I don't know who Sarah Mitchell is, but I know exactly where she keeps her spare key, what time she leaves for work, and how to disable her alarm system. I know because I've been watching her during my missing time. The worst part? I found Sarah's file in my storage unit 3 weeks ago, which means I've been planning this, preparing for this, learning everything about her while I thought I was sleeping. I'm writing this at 5:47 a.m. In exactly 1 hour, my missing time will begin. I'll wake up at 6 p.m. with no memory of what happened. But I have a feeling Sarah Mitchell won't be going to work tomorrow. And I don't think I'm the only one this is happening to. The family album. My grandmother died last month, and cleaning out her house fell to me. 87 years of accumulated memories crammed into a 2-bedroom ranch. I expected boxes of old clothes, outdated kitchen gadgets, maybe some antiques worth selling. I didn't expect to find myself. The photo album was tucked away in her bedroom closet, wrapped in tissue paper like something precious. Heavy leather-bound, the the kind families used to keep on coffee tables. I opened it expecting yellowed wedding photos and baby pictures of my dad. The first page stopped me cold. It was me, 5 years old, sitting on a swing in a park I didn't recognize, laughing at something off camera. But I'd never been to this park. The trees were wrong, the playground equipment unfamiliar. And I was wearing clothes I'd never owned, a red dress with white polka dots that my mother would never have bought. I flipped the page. Me again, maybe 7 this time, blowing out candles on a birthday cake. 8 candles, but my 8th birthday had been at Chuck E. Cheese with a superhero theme. This cake was homemade, chocolate with pink roses, in a kitchen that wasn't ours. Page after page of my childhood, but wrong. All wrong. Me at Christmas morning, unwrapping gifts I'd never received. Me on family vacations to places we'd never been. Me with relatives I didn't recognize, their faces carefully scratched out with black ink, but their bodies still visible around me. The handwriting underneath each photo was my grandmother's careful script. Emma's first day of school. Emma learns to ride a bike. Emma at the lake house. But these weren't my memories. I called my dad, hands shaking as I held the album. Did Grandma ever take me on trips without you and Mom? When I was little. Long pause. What kind of trips, sweetheart? To a lake house? Or that park with the big oak trees? Do you remember me having a red polka dot dress? Emma, you hated dresses. Refused to wear them until you were 12. And your grandmother, she never took you anywhere without us. She was always worried about being alone with kids after what happened with your aunt. What happened with my aunt? He'd mentioned it before, but never gave details. Family tragedy, he'd said. Better left in the past. I pressed him. Dad, what exactly happened with Aunt Linda? Another pause. Longer this time. She had problems, Emma. Mental health issues. She became obsessed with having a daughter. When she couldn't get pregnant, she started taking things too far with neighborhood kids. My stomach dropped. What do you mean, taking things too far? She'd follow little girls home from school. Take pictures. Once, she tried to convince a neighbor's daughter that she was her real mother. The family pressed charges. That's why she moved away when you were 3. Aunt Linda. I remembered her vaguely, a quiet woman who always seemed sad, who gave the best hugs and always had candy in her purse. She'd moved to Oregon, Dad had said. We've lost touch. Dad, where did Aunt Linda move to exactly? I don't. Why are you asking all this? Just tell me. Please. Millbrook. Little town outside Portland. But Emma, she died years ago. Cancer. Why? I hung up and Googled Millbrook, Oregon. Small town, population 3,000. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone. I found the local newspaper's website and searched for Linda's obituary. What I found was worse than an obituary. A missing person report from 2019. Sarah Chin, age 8. Last seen walking home from school. The accompanying photo showed a little girl with dark hair and my exact smile, wearing a red dress with white polka dots. I searched deeper. More missing children from Millbrook over the past 15 years. All girls between ages 5 and 10. All with similar builds, similar coloring. All resembling me at those ages. The police reports mentioned an elderly woman seen talking to several of the children before they disappeared. Witnesses described her as grandmotherly and trustworthy. Someone the kids would naturally follow. I drove to Oregon that night, the photo album burning like a guilty secret in my passenger seat. Millbrook was exactly as I'd imagined. Quiet streets, old houses, the kind of place where kids still played outside unsupervised. The address from Linda's last known residence led me to a small house on the outskirts of town. The current resident, Mrs. Patterson, remembered Linda well. Sweet lady, she said. Always talked about her granddaughter back east. Said she missed her terribly. Did she have pictures? Oh my, yes. Whole album's full. That girl was her pride and joy. Always showing off new photos, birthday parties, school plays, family trips. Made the rest of us grandmothers jealous. Mrs. Patterson invited me in for coffee. On her mantelpiece, I spotted a framed photo of Linda at what looked like a community event. She was standing next to a little girl in a yellow sundress, her arm protectively around the child's shoulders. Who's the little girl with my aunt? Mrs. Patterson squinted at the photo. That's little Sarah Chin. Poor thing. She went missing not long after this was taken. Such a tragedy. The same Sarah from the missing person report, wearing the same dress I'd seen in my grandmother's photo album. Mrs. Patterson, did Linda ever mention having problems? Mental health issues. Her face darkened. Well, toward the end, some of us wondered. She'd get confused sometimes, call random children by her granddaughter's name. Once, I saw her following a little girl home from school, taking pictures. When I asked about it, she got very upset. Said she was just documenting Emma's activities for her son back east. I drove home in a daze, pieces falling into place like a horrible puzzle. Linda hadn't been taking pictures of me during my childhood. She'd been taking pictures of other children, children who looked like me, and pretending they were me, creating false memories of a granddaughter she barely knew, substituting stolen moments with children who trusted her, children who disappeared. The album wasn't a record of my childhood. It was evidence of Linda's crimes, carefully curated and passed down to my grandmother, who probably never questioned why she had so many photos of me that she didn't remember taking. I should have called the police. I should have turned over the album immediately. Instead, I kept looking through it, because on the very last page, dated just 2 months ago, there was one final photo. Me as an adult, standing outside my apartment building. Same careful handwriting underneath. Emma, all grown up, but Linda died 3 years ago. Someone else has been watching me. Someone else has been taking pictures, and they know where I live. I should have known something was wrong when they scheduled the interview for 11 p.m. We're a 24-hour operation, the woman on the phone explained. Night shift supervisor position. We need to see how you handle the evening environment. I needed the job. 6 months unemployed, savings drained, eviction notice on my kitchen table. When TechFlow Solutions called about a warehouse supervisor position paying twice my last salary, I didn't ask too many questions. The address led me to an industrial complex outside town. No signs, just a number painted on a concrete wall. The parking lot was empty except for a single black sedan and my beat-up Honda. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed over bare concrete floors. A receptionist sat behind bulletproof glass, her smile too bright for the late hour. "Michael Torres for the 11 p.m. interview," I said. She handed me a clipboard through a slot. "Just some basic paperwork. Take your time." The forms were standard: contact information, employment history, emergency contacts. But at the bottom, in small print, "I consent to physical examination and psychological evaluation as part of the hiring process." I should have left then, but $75,000 a year was more than I'd ever made. They called my name at exactly 11:17 p.m. A tall man in a white coat led me down a hallway lined with doors marked only with numbers. No windows, no exit signs, just endless fluorescent lighting and the sound of our footsteps on polished concrete. "I'm Dr. Reeves," he said, opening door number 7. "I handle our employee screening process." The room looked more like a medical office than an interview space. Examination table, computer terminal, cabinets full of supplies I couldn't identify. Dr. Reeves gestured to a chair across from a metal desk. "Tell me about your sleep patterns," he began. Strange first question, but I answered honestly. Light sleeper, occasional insomnia, nothing unusual. "Any medications? Allergies? History of sleepwalking? Is this relevant to warehouse supervision?" His smile never wavered. "We're very thorough here. Our employees' well-being is paramount." The questions got stranger. Did I live alone? How often did I contact family? Would anyone notice if I disappeared for a few days? "Look," I said, standing up. "I appreciate the opportunity, but I don't think this is a good fit." Dr. Reeves pressed a button on his desk. The door clicked locked. "Please sit down, Michael. We're just getting started." That's when I noticed the 4 stand in the corner. The restraints hanging from the examination table. The camera mounted in the ceiling, red light blinking. "This isn't a job interview, is it?" "Oh, but it is," Dr. Reeves said, pulling on latex gloves. "We're interviewing you for a very special position. Long-term commitment, excellent benefits, and you'll never have to worry about unemployment again." I lunged for the door. The handle turned, but something held it shut from the outside. I could hear voices in the hallway, footsteps approaching. "The company I mentioned, TechFlow Solutions? It doesn't exist," Dr. Reeves continued calmly. "We create job postings for people in desperate situations. People who won't be missed right away." The door opened. 2 men in security uniforms entered, moving to block my path. "What do you want from me?" Dr. Reeves consulted a tablet. "You're healthy, intelligent, no close family ties. Perfect candidate for our research program. We're studying stress responses, pain tolerance, psychological breaking points. Very lucrative field." I fought. God, I fought hard. But they were prepared, experienced. The needle went into my neck before I could break free. As the room blurred and darkened, I heard Dr. Reeves speaking into a recorder. Subject 247 acquired. Beginning initial assessment protocol. I woke up in a windowless room, wearing clothes that weren't mine. A number was tattooed on my wrist, 247. The door was solid metal with a food slot at the bottom. On the wall, someone had scratched tally marks. Hundreds of them, grouped in sets of 5, and underneath, in desperate handwriting. They said it would only be a few tests. That was 8 months ago. That was 3 weeks ago. They come for me every few days. Sometimes it's Dr. Reeves with his questions and needles. Sometimes it's others, people in lab coats who speak in clinical terms about stimulus response and behavioral modification. They're not just studying us. They're training us, breaking us down, building us back up as something else. I've seen others who've been here longer. Empty eyes, mechanical movements, complete compliance. Yesterday, they showed me a job posting. Warehouse supervisor, night shift, $75,000 salary. Same ad that brought me here, but with a different company name. We need someone trustworthy to help with recruitment, Dr. Reeves explained. Someone who understands how desperate people think, how they can be motivated. They want me to become the bait, to lure others into the same trap that caught me. I told them no. They said I'd change my mind eventually. Everyone does. But I'm writing this on the back of food container labels, hiding it in my mattress. If anyone finds this, know that TechFlow Solutions was fake. So was Meridian Industries, and Apex Manufacturing, and probably whatever company name they're using now. Don't trust late-night job interviews. Don't trust opportunities that seem too good to be true. And if you see me again someday, if I'm the one calling you about a great job opportunity, run. Because by then, I won't be me anymore. I found the listing on a college job board. Responsible babysitter needed for quiet 6-year-old. Evening hours, excellent pay. Must be discreet and follow instructions exactly. $30 an hour was more than I'd ever made babysitting. I called immediately. Mrs. Chen's voice was soft, almost whispering. Can you start tonight? It's last minute, but we're desperate. My husband and I have an emergency. The address led to an expensive neighborhood I'd never been to. Massive houses set back from the street, perfect lawns, the kind of place where people minded their own business. Mrs. Chen answered the door looking frazzled. Designer clothes, expensive jewelry, but dark circles under her eyes like she hadn't slept in weeks. Thank you for coming so late, she said, ushering me inside. Sophie is already asleep. She shouldn't wake up, but if she does, just give her the medicine on the nightstand and she'll go right back down. The house was immaculate. Too clean, like a museum. Family photos lined the hallway. Mr. and Mrs. Chun with a beautiful little girl with long black hair and bright eyes. The medicine? I asked. Just liquid Tylenol. Sophie has trouble sleeping. 1 capful, no more. She grabbed her purse, keys jangling. We should be back by 2 a.m. Don't go into the basement, and please don't answer the door for anyone. Before I could ask why, they were gone. The house felt different once I was alone. Too quiet. I settled on the couch with my textbooks, but the silence was oppressive. No hum of appliances, no settling sounds. Just dead air. Around midnight, I heard crying from upstairs. Sophie's room was at the end of a long hallway. I knocked softly and pushed the door open. The little girl in the bed wasn't the same one from the photos. This child was blonde, thin, with hollow cheeks and scared eyes. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old. Hi, sweetie, I whispered. I'm Katie. Your mom and dad asked me to watch you tonight. Her eyes went wide with terror. You're not supposed to see me, she whispered. Mama said strangers can't see me. Something cold settled in my stomach. What's your name? I don't remember. Mama calls me Sophie now, but that wasn't always my name. I knelt beside the bed, trying to keep my voice calm. Where are your real parents, honey? Tears spilled down her cheeks. I don't know. Mama and Papa said they didn't want me anymore. That's why I have to stay in this room and take the sleepy medicine. The sleepy medicine. I looked at the nightstand. What I'd assumed was children's Tylenol was actually a prescription bottle. The label had been scratched off, but I could make out part of a word. Azepam. Diazepam. Valium. They were drugging this child to keep her compliant. Sweetie, what's the last thing you remember before coming here? Playing at the park with my real mama. She had yellow hair like me. There was a nice lady who said she knew where my mama went, and she would take me there. Her voice was getting drowsy. But she lied. She brought me here and said I was Sophie now. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone. No signal. I tried the landline, dead. I heard a car in the driveway. Listen to me, I whispered urgently. Pretend to be asleep. Don't let them know we talked. The child nodded and closed her eyes, but I could see her trembling under the blankets. I raced downstairs and threw myself onto the couch, grabbing my textbook just as the front door opened. How did everything go? Mrs. Chin asked, but her smile looked forced. Perfect. She never woke up. Mr. Chun was studying my face carefully. You didn't go upstairs, did you? We specifically said she wouldn't wake up. No, I stayed down here the whole time. But I could tell he didn't believe me. His eyes were cold, calculating. Mrs. Chun handed me an envelope. Here's your payment. $240 for 8 hours. Too much money. Way too much for a simple babysitting job. We'll call you again soon, Mr. Chun said. We travel frequently for business. It's so hard to find reliable sitters who understand discretion. I nodded and headed for the door, every instinct screaming at me to run. Oh, Katie? Mrs. Chin called as I reached my car. You didn't happen to see any missing child posters around campus, did you? Sometimes people put up flyers, but they're usually false alarms. Runaway kids making up stories. The way she said it made my blood freeze. I drove straight to the police station. The desk sergeant looked skeptical until I mentioned the address. We've had complaints about that house before, he said. Neighbors reported strange activity. But every time we check, it's just a normal family. Mr. and Mrs. Chun, their daughter Sophie. No evidence of wrongdoing. The child upstairs isn't Sophie. She's blonde, younger, and she said they changed her name. He leaned forward. Ma'am, are you certain? Because we have the Chun family's documentation. Birth certificate, medical records, school enrollment. Sophie Chun is a 6-year-old Asian girl with black hair. I insisted they do a welfare check. 2 officers followed me back to the house. Mrs. Chun answered the door in a bathrobe, looking confused and hurt. Officers, what's this about? We need to check on your daughter, ma'am. Of course. Sophie's sleeping, but you can see her. We went upstairs to the same room. The same bed, but the child lying there had long black hair and Asian features. She looked exactly like the girl in the photographs downstairs. See? Mrs. Chin whispered. Our daughter, Sophie. 6 years old. The officers apologized for the disturbance. One pulled me aside as we left. Look, miss, I understand you were trying to help, but there's no blonde child in that house. Maybe you were tired, imagined things. But I know what I saw, and I know that the real Sophie Chin is probably buried somewhere, while some other family is desperately searching for their missing blonde daughter. I've been watching the house for 3 weeks now. Different cars come and go, always at night, always carrying small suitcases. And yesterday, I saw a new missing child poster on campus. 7-year-old Emma Rodriguez. Brown hair, brown eyes. The same eyes I saw looking back at me through Sophie's bedroom window last night. The new medication. The clinical trial seemed like a miracle. $5,000 for 6 weeks of testing a new anxiety medication, plus free therapy sessions. After years of panic attacks that cost me 2 jobs and most of my friends, I was desperate enough to try anything. Dr. Morrison's office was in a gleaming medical complex downtown. Professional, legitimate, covered by my insurance. The paperwork looked standard: medical history, consent forms, the usual warnings about side effects. This is cutting-edge treatment, Dr. Morrison explained, her voice warm and reassuring. We're testing a revolutionary approach to anxiety disorders. The medication helps rewire neural pathways, essentially teaching your brain new responses to stress. The pill was small, white, unremarkable. I was supposed to take one every morning and keep a detailed journal of my mood, thoughts, and activities. The first week was amazing. My anxiety practically disappeared. I slept through the night for the first time in months. I started applying for jobs again, went out with friends, felt like myself for the first time in years. But I started losing time. Little gaps at first. I'd sit down to watch TV, and suddenly it was 3 hours later with no memory of what I'd seen. I'd find grocery lists in my handwriting for items I didn't remember needing. My phone would show calls to numbers I didn't recognize. Mild dissociation is common, Dr. Morrison said when I mentioned it during my weekly check-in. Your brain is adjusting to new neural patterns. The gaps should decrease as treatment continues. But they got worse. I woke up one morning wearing clothes I'd never seen before. Expensive clothes, perfectly fitted, with the tags still on. My credit card showed a $400 charge at a boutique I'd never been to. My journal entries became strange. My handwriting, but thoughts I didn't remember having. The blue car follows the same route every day. Driver leaves keys on the visor. Easy target. Third house on Maple Street has no security system. Single woman, works late shifts. I confronted Dr. Morrison, but she seemed unconcerned. Some patients experience enhanced observational skills during treatment. Your subconscious is processing more information than usual. It's actually a positive sign. That night, I decided to stay awake and see what happened during my missing time. At exactly 2:17 a.m., I felt an overwhelming urge to get dressed and leave the house. Not tiredness, compulsion. Like someone else was controlling my body. I fought it for 20 minutes, but the urge grew stronger, almost painful. I found myself walking to my car with no memory of making the decision. I drove to the wealthy neighborhood across town, parking outside a house I'd never seen before. But somehow, I knew the layout perfectly. I knew the woman inside worked double shifts at the hospital, that she kept her jewelry in a box on her bedroom dresser, that her back door lock was broken. I sat in my car for 2 hours, taking detailed notes about the house, the schedule, the vulnerabilities. Writing in my journal like I was documenting a target. When I finally drove home, I had no memory of why I'd gone there or what I'd been planning. The next morning, I found research printouts in my apartment. Floor plans, security company information, police response times for that neighborhood. I'd apparently spent hours online gathering intelligence about breaking and entering. I tried to stop taking the medication. The withdrawal was immediate and brutal. Not just returning anxiety, but violent tremors, hallucinations, an overwhelming compulsion to take the next dose. When I finally gave in and took the pill, I felt instant relief. And found a new journal entry I didn't remember writing. Target confirmed. Entry planned for Friday night. Friday was 2 days away. I called Dr. Morrison's office in a panic, but got a recording saying the number was disconnected. I drove to the medical complex. The office was empty, with a for lease sign in the window. I searched online for any record of Dr. Morrison or the clinical trial. Nothing. No published studies, no medical license, no trace of the research program that was supposed to be revolutionary. But I found something else. Police reports from 6 different cities over the past 2 years. A string of burglaries, all targeting single women who worked night shifts. The burglars seemed to know exactly when the victims would be away, which houses had valuables, how to disable security systems. The MO was always the same, meticulous planning, inside knowledge, no prints or DNA evidence. Like someone with training in surveillance and infiltration. In each city, the burglaries stopped abruptly after 6 to 8 weeks. But they always started up again somewhere else. I realized the medication wasn't treating my anxiety. It was programming me. During those missing hours, I wasn't dissociating, I was being controlled. Trained to case houses, gather intelligence, plan crimes with professional precision. The clinical trial was fake. Dr. Morrison was recruiting people with mental health issues, people who were desperate and isolated, people who would be easily discredited if they tried to report what was happening. I flushed the remaining pills down the toilet, but the compulsion remained. Every night at 2:17 a.m., my body wanted to get dressed and continue the surveillance. The withdrawal symptoms were getting worse, seizures, paranoia, memory gaps even without the medication. But I'm fighting it, writing everything down while I still can, while I'm still me. Because I checked the police reports again last night. The burglaries in this city started 3 weeks ago, right when I began the clinical trial, and tomorrow is Friday. I downloaded Soul Sync after my friend Jessica raved about it. It's not like other dating apps, she said. It uses some kind of advanced algorithm to find your perfect psychological match. I met Derek on there 3 months ago, and we're practically the same person. The app required an extensive personality quiz, 300 questions about everything from childhood memories to deepest fears. It took me 2 hours to complete, but the marketing promised unprecedented compatibility based on psychological profiling. My first match was Tom. The app claimed we had a 94% compatibility rating, the highest possible score. Tom's profile was perfect. Same interests, same sense of humor. even the same obscure book preferences. His messages felt like talking to myself. He anticipated my thoughts, finished my sentences, shared memories that felt eerily familiar. We met for coffee after a week of texting. He was exactly as advertised, charming, funny, with mannerisms that mirrored my own. We talked for 4 hours without a single awkward pause. "It's like we've known each other forever," Tom said as we parted ways. He was right. It felt natural, effortless. Too good to be true. But something nagged at me. During our conversation, Tom had mentioned specific details about my life that I was certain I hadn't told him. The name of my first dog, my childhood address, the scar on my knee from a bike accident. I must have mentioned it in my messages, I told myself. But when I checked our chat history, there was no record of those details. Our second date was at his apartment. Tom cooked dinner. My favorite meal, prepared exactly how I liked it, down to the specific brand of pasta sauce I preferred. Lucky guess, he laughed when I commented on it. His apartment was unsettling. Not messy or strange, but too familiar. The layout was identical to mine. Same furniture arrangement, same artwork, even the same houseplants in the same locations. When I mentioned the coincidence, Tom seemed confused. "What do you mean? This is completely different from your place." But it wasn't. It was like a mirror image of my apartment. I started paying closer attention. Tom knew things he shouldn't know. He mentioned a childhood trauma I'd never told anyone about. He hummed a song my grandmother used to sing to me. He instinctively avoided foods I was allergic to without me mentioning my allergies. When I confronted him, Tom looked genuinely puzzled. "Sarah, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just being myself." That's when I realized the truth was worse than I'd imagined. Tom wasn't pretending to know these things about me. He genuinely believed we had shared conversations and experiences that had never happened. He was living with memories that weren't his own. I went home and researched SoulSync. The company was a subsidiary of NeuralBridge Technologies, which specialized in cognitive behavioral mapping and social integration protocols. They had contracts with the Department of Defense and several private security firms. The personality quiz hadn't been matching us based on compatibility. It had been mining our psychological profiles, our deepest thoughts and memories, our behavioral patterns. And somehow, they were implanting those patterns into other people. I checked SoulSync's terms of service. Buried in pages of legal jargon was a clause about anonymized data sharing for research purposes and neural pathway optimization studies. We had consented to letting them copy our minds. I met Jessica for lunch, planning to warn her about the app. But something was wrong with her too. She kept referencing conversations we'd never had, mentioning details about my life that I'd only told the app during registration. "Remember when you told me about your fear of drowning?" she said. "From when you almost drowned at summer camp when you were 7? I had never almost drowned. I had never been to summer camp. But those details were in my SoulSync profile, fabricated answers I'd given to seem more interesting. Jessica was living with my fake memories as if they were her own experiences. That evening, I got messages from 3 different SoulSync matches. They all knew intimate details about my life. They all shared my specific phobias, my childhood memories, my emotional triggers. But when I video called them, they seemed genuinely confused by my accusations. "I've always been afraid of spiders," one insisted, even though fear of spiders had been my answer to question number 47 on the personality quiz. They weren't lying. They truly believed these borrowed fears and memories were their own. I realized SoulSync wasn't just a dating app, it was a massive psychological experiment. They were creating artificial connections by implanting pieces of users' minds into other people, then studying how these manufactured relationships developed. We were all becoming fragments of each other, losing pieces of our original selves with every interaction. I tried to delete my account, but the app wouldn't let me. Deletion would compromise ongoing research protocols, the error message read. "Please contact customer service for account modification requests." The customer service number was disconnected. I'm writing this as a warning. If you've used SoulSync, check your memories carefully. Ask yourself if that childhood fear really belongs to you. Question whether your strongest emotional reactions are actually your own. Because I just realized something terrifying. I can't remember what my original personality was like before I downloaded the app. Every day more of me feels borrowed, copied, artificial. And yesterday, I got a notification that I have a new match with a 98% compatibility rating. Someone named Sarah, who looks exactly like me. The memory box. My mother died with Alzheimer's, and I found the storage unit key taped under her jewelry box. Unit 47 at Secure Space Storage, paid up for 5 years in advance. Mom had been planning ahead, which wasn't like her at all in those final confused months. Inside the unit was a single cardboard box labeled for Rachel. When I'm gone, in my mother's careful handwriting. I expected family photos, maybe some heirlooms she wanted me to have. Instead, I found newspaper clippings. Dozens of them, dating back 30 years. Missing persons cases. All women between ages 25 and 35. All blonde, like me. All last seen in towns where we had lived during my childhood. Under the clippings was a manila folder marked Lisa. Inside were documents that made my hands shake. A birth certificate for Lisa Marie Patterson, born the same day as me but 2 years earlier. Medical records. School transcripts. A driver's license photo showing a girl who looked exactly like me, but wearing an expression I'd never seen on my own face. At the bottom of the box was a letter in Mom's handwriting, but clearer than anything she'd written in her final years. Like she'd composed it before the disease took hold. Rachel, if you're reading this, then you found what I never wanted you to see. But you deserve to know the truth about who you are. About who we were. Your real name is Lisa Marie Patterson. You disappeared from Pine Ridge when you were 7 years old. I took you from a playground while your mother was talking to another parent. It was the most terrible thing I'd ever done, but I convinced myself I was saving you. I had lost 3 babies before you. Miscarriages that nearly destroyed me. Your father didn't understand my pain, the emptiness that consumed everything. When I saw you playing alone that day, you looked so much like the daughter I'd dreamed of having. Same golden hair, same blue eyes. I told myself your mother wasn't watching carefully enough, that you were neglected, unloved. I created stories to justify what I did, but they were lies. I changed your name, moved us across the country, built you a new life. You were so young, the memories faded quickly. I became your mother in every way that mattered, except the one that mattered most. I had no right to you. The clippings are other children I almost took. Times when the urge was so strong I followed families home, learned their routines, planned how I could take their daughters too. But I couldn't do it again. Having you filled that emptiness, but it also made me realize what I had done to your real mother. I tried to return you when you were 8. I drove back to Pine Ridge, parked outside the police station for 3 hours. But by then you called me Mama. You trusted me completely. I couldn't bear to see the confusion and fear in your eyes when strangers told you I wasn't your real mother. So I kept running. New towns, new identities, always staying ahead of questions. I told myself you were better off with me, that your birth family had probably moved on. More lies. Your real mother never stopped looking for you. Her name is Margaret Patterson. She never remarried, never had other children. She spent every penny she had on private investigators, posted your age progression photos on every missing children website. She held vigils on your birthday every year. She's still alive, Rachel. Still looking. The Alzheimer's is taking everything from me now, but it's also a mercy. Soon I won't remember the terrible thing I did, won't carry the guilt anymore. But you'll have to carry the truth. I'm sorry for the life I stole from you. I'm sorry for the mother who's been grieving for 30 years. I'm sorry for making you an unwilling accomplice to my crime, just by loving me as a daughter should. There's enough money in the account to start over if you choose. To find your real family, or to disappear entirely. The choice should be yours. I took too many choices away already. I love you. That was never a lie, even if everything else was. I sat in that storage unit for hours, staring at a driver's license photo of myself with someone else's name. The resemblance was perfect, same face, same age, but different eyes. Lisa's eyes held something mine never had, the wariness of a child who knew the world wasn't safe. I drove to Pine Ridge that weekend. It was smaller than I remembered, though those memories felt strange now. Were they real, or just implanted by years of stories Mom had told me about our life there? Margaret Patterson still lived in the same house. I recognized it immediately, though I couldn't tell if that was actual memory, or just the familiarity of seeing something you've studied in photographs. She answered the door looking exactly like an older version of me. Same blonde hair, now silver. Same blue eyes, but hollowed by decades of grief. "Can I help you?" she asked, and I saw the exact moment recognition hit her. Her face went white, then red, and she grabbed the doorframe for support. "Lisa?" she whispered. Hearing that name from her lips unlocked something in my brain. Fragments of memory, real ones this time. Playing in a backyard with a tire swing. making cookies in a kitchen with yellow walls. A woman's voice singing lullabies, different from the ones Mom sang to me. I don't know, I said honestly. I think so, but I don't remember being Lisa. Margaret invited me in. Her living room was a shrine to the missing child I had been, age progression photos on the mantle, missing person flyers, news clippings about the search. 30 years of a mother's obsession with finding her stolen daughter. I knew you were alive, she said, tears streaming down her face. Everyone told me to accept that you were probably dead, but I knew. A mother knows. But here's the thing that haunts me. I don't feel like her daughter. 30 years of being Rachel can't be erased by a box of documents and recovered memories. When she hugged me, it felt like embracing a stranger. The woman who raised me was a kidnapper, a criminal who destroyed this family's life. But she was also the only mother I remember, who read me bedtime stories and bandaged my scraped knees and loved me fiercely, even though she had no right to. I don't know who I'm supposed to be now. Lisa died in that playground 30 years ago. Rachel was built on a foundation of lies. And Margaret is looking at me like I can somehow fill the hole my disappearance carved in her life. But I'm not the 7-year-old who was taken. I'm a stranger wearing her daughter's face. The worst part of me wishes I'd never found that storage unit. Wishes I could have lived the rest of my life as Rachel, never knowing about the grief I'd unknowingly caused or the love I'd been stolen from. But now Margaret has hope again, and I don't know how to tell her that her real daughter is gone forever. I did the ancestry test as a Christmas gift to myself. 23andMe was having a sale, and I'd always wondered about my father's side of the family. Mom had been vague about him my whole life, said he died when I was a baby, no other relatives, end of discussion. The results came back in January. 47% Irish, 23% German, 18% Scandinavian. Nothing surprising there. But the real shock was in the DNA matches section. I had a half-sister. According to the site, Jessica Moreau shared 22% of my DNA, indicating we had the same father. She lived in Portland, just 3 hours away. Her profile showed she was 2 years older than me, a nurse, married with twin daughters. I messaged her immediately. Her response came within hours. Oh my God, I've been wondering about you my whole life. Dad mentioned he had another daughter, but said your mother moved away before you were born. Can we meet? Dad. She called him Dad, present tense. My father wasn't dead. We met at a coffee shop halfway between our cities. Jessica looked exactly like me. Same dark hair, same green eyes, same stubborn chin. Looking at her was like seeing myself in 2 years. Dad's going to be so excited, she said, scrolling through photos on her phone. He talks about you all the time. Rachel Marie, born October 15th. He even kept your birth certificate. My birth certificate, that my supposedly dead father had kept for 25 years. Jessica, my mom told me he died when I was a baby. Her face went pale. What? No, that's impossible. Dad's very much alive. He lives in Riverside, about an hour from Portland. He's been looking for you since your mother disappeared. Disappeared. Not moved away. Disappeared. Jessica showed me photos of our father, Robert Chin, a successful accountant with kind eyes and my same smile. Pictures of him at Christmas dinners, birthday parties, graduations. 25 years of a life I should have been part of. He hired private investigators, Jessica continued. Spent thousands trying to find you and your mother. The trail went cold when you were 3. He assumed she'd changed your names, maybe left the country. But we'd never left. We'd been living 2 states away under our real names, in the same house since I was 5. I drove home in a daze and confronted my mother that evening. She was in the kitchen making dinner, humming like nothing had changed. Mom, I need to know about my father. She went very still. I told you, sweetheart. He died when you were little. His name is Robert Chin. He lives in Riverside. He has another daughter named Jessica, and he's been looking for us for 25 years. The wooden spoon slipped from her hand and clattered to the floor. How do you know that name? DNA test. I found my half-sister. Mom, why did you tell me he was dead? She sank into a chair, suddenly looking much older than her 53 years. Because he might as well be. To us, anyway. What does that mean? She was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. Your father didn't want you, Rachel. When I told him I was pregnant, he said he already had 1 child and couldn't afford another. He wanted me to end the pregnancy. That's not true. Jessica said he kept my birth certificate, that he talks about me. Jessica doesn't know the whole story. Mom's voice turned sharp. Robert was married when we were together. I was his secretary, 22 years old and stupid enough to think he loved me. When I got pregnant, he panicked. Said his wife couldn't know, that it would destroy his family. I felt the ground shifting under me. So you left. He gave me money to disappear. Enough to start over somewhere else, on the condition that I never contact him or tell you who he was. I was young, scared, and broke. I took the money and ran. But he's been looking for us. Mom laughed bitterly. Has he? Or has he been making a show of looking to ease his guilt? It's easy to hire investigators when you know they'll never find anything because you paid the person to stay hidden. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. Dad wants to meet you. Can you come for dinner Sunday? I showed the message to my mother. Her face crumpled. Rachel, please. Don't do this. You don't understand what kind of man he is. But I was already planning the drive to Riverside. Sunday dinner at the Chin house was everything I'd dreamed of as a child. Big family meal, warm conversation, photo albums full of memories I should have been part of. Robert was exactly as I'd imagined, kind, funny, genuinely emotional about meeting me. I never stopped looking, he said, tears in his eyes. Your mother just vanished. I was so worried something had happened to you both. Jessica's twin daughters, my nieces, climbed on my lap and called me Aunt Rachel. It felt like coming home, but something nagged at me. During dinner, Robert mentioned details about my childhood that seemed impossible for him to know. My first grade teacher's name, the scar on my knee from falling off my bike, the stuffed elephant I'd slept with until I was 10. How do you know all that? I asked. Robert looked uncomfortable. Your mother sent updates sometimes. Pictures, school reports. I think she felt bad about keeping you from me. But Mom had sworn she'd never contacted him. Had never sent pictures or updates. That night, I went through the photo albums Jessica had shown me earlier. In the back of one, I found something that made my blood freeze. Pictures of me as a child that I'd never seen before. Me at age 5, playing in our backyard. Me at 7, walking to school. Me at 10, riding the bike I'd fallen off. They weren't professional surveillance photos, but they were taken from a distance, without my knowledge. Someone had been watching me, documenting my childhood for years. The photos were labeled in Robert's handwriting. Rachel, age 5. Rachel's first day of 3rd grade. Rachel learning to ride her bike. My father hadn't been searching for me. He'd been watching me. For 20 years, he'd known exactly where we were. I confronted him the next morning. Robert didn't try to deny it. I needed to make sure you were okay, he said quietly. Your mother took my money, but I couldn't just forget you existed. I hired people to check on you occasionally, make sure you were safe and healthy. You've been stalking us for 20 years. I've been protecting you. Do you know what your mother did with the money I gave her? She spent it on drugs, Rachel. For 3 years after she left, she was a complete addict. You were neglected, underfed, living in squalor. I thought about my early childhood memories. They were hazy, but I remembered being hungry a lot. Remembered Mom sleeping all day, forgetting to make meals. I was going to take you away from her, Robert continued. I had evidence of neglect, lawyers ready to file for custody. But then she got clean. Started taking care of you properly. So I backed off, but I kept watching to make sure. Why didn't you just contact us? His face darkened. Because your mother threatened to disappear again if I ever tried. Said she'd take you somewhere I'd never find you, and this time she wouldn't leave a trail. I couldn't risk losing you completely. I drove home with my head spinning, not sure what to believe. Had my mother been protecting me from an obsessive stalker, or had she been keeping me from a father who genuinely cared? But when I got home, Mom was gone. Her bedroom was empty, closets cleared out. There was a note on my pillow. Rachel, I saw the photos on your phone from dinner with them. I knew this day would come eventually. Robert Chin is not the man he pretends to be. I have proof of what he really is, but it's not safe for me to stay and explain. Check the safety deposit box at First National Bank. Key is taped under the bathroom sink. Box number 247, password is your birthday. Trust me one more time, and then make your own choice. I love you. Mom. In the safety deposit box, I found police reports dating back 26 years. Robert Chin, investigated for stalking multiple women. Restraining orders filed by 2 ex-girlfriends. A sealed juvenile record for inappropriate contact with minors. And at the bottom of the pile, medical records showing that Jessica wasn't his biological daughter either. He'd been collecting us. The Hartwell family found me through a house-sitting website. 3 weeks watching their beautiful Victorian home while they vacationed in Europe. Easy money, $500 a week to water plants, collect mail, and keep the place secure. Mrs. Hartwell met me at a coffee shop to hand over the keys. Elegant woman in her 50s, perfectly put together, with an oddly intense way of maintaining eye contact. The most important thing, she said, pressing the keys into my palm, is that you never go into the basement. It's being renovated and isn't safe. Promise me, David. I promised. The basement door was locked anyway, with what looked like a heavy-duty deadbolt. The house was immaculate. Spotless hardwood floors, antique furniture, family photos lining the hallways. The Hartwells had 2 teenage children, a boy and girl who looked about 15 and 17. Normal suburban family living the American dream. The first week was perfect. I worked on my novel during the day, watched Netflix at night, and enjoyed having a house to myself instead of my cramped studio apartment. The only odd thing was how the neighbors avoided eye contact when I walked the dog. On day 8, I noticed a smell. Faint at first, like something had died in the walls. I checked for dead mice, cleaned out the garbage disposal, but couldn't locate the source. The smell seemed strongest near the basement door. That night, I heard scratching sounds coming from below. Soft but persistent, like fingernails on wood. I convinced myself it was pipes settling, or maybe raccoons in the walls. But the scratching continued every night, always around 2 a.m. On day 12, I found a note slipped under the front door. Check the basement. They're not in Europe. A friend. My hands shook as I read it. Someone was playing a cruel prank, trying to scare the house sitter. The Hartwells were definitely in Europe. Mrs. Hartwell had texted me photos from Paris just yesterday. But the smell was getting worse, and the scratching was louder. That evening, I called Mrs. Hartwell. The phone rang once before going to voicemail, her voice bright and cheerful. "Hi, you've reached Linda Hartwell. We're touring Europe for 3 weeks. Leave a message." But something felt wrong about the recording. Too perfect, too rehearsed. I tried calling the number again an hour later. This time, it went straight to voicemail without ringing. The same message, but when I listened carefully, I could hear a strange echo in the background, like she was recording in a small, enclosed space. Not a European hotel room. Somewhere much smaller. Against my better judgment, I examined the basement door. The deadbolt looked new, but there were scratches around the lock like someone had been trying to pick it, or trying to get out. I found a screwdriver and removed the hinges instead. The basement was pitch black and reeked of decay. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing a partially finished renovation. Concrete walls, exposed beams, and in the corner, 3 sleeping bags arranged on the floor. Empty food containers scattered around them. A camping toilet, and scratched into the concrete wall. Help US written over and over in what looked like fingernails worn down to the quick. This wasn't a renovation. It was a prison. I heard footsteps upstairs. My blood turned to ice as I realized someone had entered the house while I was in the basement. Heavy footsteps moving through the kitchen, heading toward the basement door. I clicked off my flashlight and crouched behind a support beam. Heart hammering so loud I was sure it could be heard upstairs. "David!" A man's voice called down. "Everything okay down there?" Thought I heard something. I didn't recognize the voice. It wasn't Mr. Hartwell. I'd spoken to him on the phone during the initial interview. "David, come on up. We need to talk." I stayed hidden, barely breathing. After what felt like hours, I heard the footsteps retreat. A door slammed somewhere above. I waited another hour before creeping upstairs. The house was empty, but there was a new note on the kitchen counter. "You weren't supposed to see that. Pack your things and leave tonight. Forget what you saw, and no one gets hurt." I should have left. Should have grabbed my stuff and run. Instead, I called the police. Officer Martinez arrived within 20 minutes. I explained about the basement, the smell, the sleeping bags. He listened patiently, then asked to see my identification and the house-sitting contract. "Mr. Peterson, I'm going to need you to come with me to answer some questions." "What? Why? Did you check the basement?" "We've had reports about this address before. Neighbors calling about strange smells, sounds at night. But every time we investigate, we find the same thing." He led me to his patrol car, but something in his tone made my skin crawl. "What do you find?" "Disturbed individuals who've broken into the house and fabricated elaborate stories about imprisoned families. The Hartwells are a respected family who've been dealing with harassment for months." "Check the basement." "You'll see." "I did check the basement, sir. It's a normal renovation. No sleeping bags, no scratches on the walls. Just construction materials and tools. But that was impossible. I had just seen the evidence with my own eyes. Officer Martinez opened the car door. The Hartwells have been very patient, but they're pressing charges this time. Breaking and entering, destruction of property. You've caused them a lot of stress. As he said this, I saw a familiar car pulling into the driveway. Mrs. Hartwell got out, but she looked different. Harder. She wasn't alone. Mr. Hartwell and 2 teenagers followed her to the house. The same family from all the photos. But they'd never left town. Wait, I said, panic rising in my voice. If they're here, who was I house sitting for? Who gave me the keys? Officer Martinez smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Sir, you broke into this house 3 days ago. The Hartwells found you living in their basement when they returned from their weekend trip. You've been having what appears to be a psychotic episode. That's not true. I have texts from Mrs. Hartwell, photos from Europe. Your phone shows no such messages. And the photos you claim to have? They're stock images from a travel website. I pulled out my phone to show him the evidence, but the text thread with Mrs. Hartwell was gone. My photo gallery was empty, except for pictures I'd taken of the house. Pictures that now showed a normal basement renovation with no sleeping bags, no scratches, no evidence of imprisonment. The family you've been imagining doesn't exist, Officer Martinez continued. There is no house-sitting arrangement. You've been living in their basement for 3 days, leaving yourself notes, talking to yourself. The neighbors reported hearing conversations, but you were the only person in the house. As he pushed me into the patrol car, I saw Mrs. Hartwell watching from her front window. She raised her hand in a small wave, and I could swear she was smiling. But if I'd been having a psychotic break for 3 days, who had been feeding me? Who had kept the house clean? Who had been answering when I called for pizza delivery? And why did I have $1,500 in cash in my wallet that I didn't remember earning?